Y'all knew this was coming. Let's talk about the episode of The Proud Family where they tackled Islamophobia.
Look, everybody. Who would do such a thing?
What the?
Oh, no.
If it wasn't for Tony.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. Thank you for tuning back in. I'm back with another episode analysis of The Proud Family. And this is an episode I'm pretty sure we all remember. Those of us that are old enough, we remember. I know some of y'all were expecting me to talk about this. The episode Culture Shock that tackled Islamophobia. I gotta say, out of all the Proud Family episodes I remember watching when I was young, this has to be a top 3 episode I remember. And something about it, watching it back then in 2003, I was about 8 years old. It was captivating, right? But something about it stuck with me all these years later. And mind you, this was post 9/11, and I'm gonna get into that. But this just goes to show the behaviors and attitudes and perspectives back then. And you look at everything going on now. I don't even gotta explain it. You on social media, you watch the news, you know everything going on now. It just goes to show you how everything comes full circle and how there's so much that needs to be done, not only in this country, but in this world. Because when you look it up, it says Islamophobia is the fear of, hatred of, or prejudice against the religion of Islam or Muslims in general, especially when seen as a source of terrorism. And that's another thing I want to talk about when it comes to different terms, because when I did like the fat phobia video or different terms, a lot of people say that don't exist, that don't exist. And I got a lot of comments like that. Oh, y'all just made that up. That don't really exist. That don't really exist. Oh, I'm not scared. I'm not. When it comes to phobias or different terms, it doesn't always mean you're scared for your life. It can mean a built-up disdain for a certain group, a certain religion, certain race, because of stereotypes, you know, which the Proud Family loves to emphasize, or just different things portrayed in the media against certain groups of people that makes you have this certain idea of them. And before I get into this episode, I want to talk about my personal story, and y'all can tell yours. But I remember 9/11. I live in New York City. I always lived in New York City. Back then, the day it happened, I was in school, and I remember it was a big thing. All the parents had to come get the kids out of school. It was a big thing, right? And nobody knew what was going on. It was so confusing. My father worked around 20 blocks away from where it happened, but luckily he was fine. You know, everything was fine. But just imagine all that going on. And I was like 6 at the time. Then I remember like 2 weeks before that, Aaliyah, the singer, she passed in a plane crash. So it was just this thing where it's just like, what's going on? But when 9/11 happened, it was such a global outcry and such a impact. You know, even years later, they still do the memorials and tributes. But after that came a lot of Islamophobia when it came to Muslims or certain groups, certain religious groups, or people wearing certain clothes and people looking at them funny and being uncomfortable. I've seen many news stories, I've seen the articles, I've seen the clips that have gone viral, but I've never experienced it in person where I've seen somebody get attacked or get teased or get said certain things. You know, I've seen it in the movies, shows, but can't say that I've seen it in person per se. I've only really seen it in the media. Have y'all witnessed it? Have y'all seen it? Anybody that is Muslim, have y'all experienced it? Like, let me know down below. And with this episode of The Proud Family, to make it easier, I'm not gonna break down the whole episode. I'm only gonna point out key moments. Before I get started on the episode breakdown, I just wanna highlight how this episode has 3 of my favorite jokes.
I'm from Afghanistan. I can't stand you.
Out there, quiet, you future hamburger flippers.
Thank you. It's a hijab.
That's something you need to find, Oscar. A job.
Now, talking about the episode, it starts out with a cultural exchange at the school. And I want to ask y'all, did y'all ever have to do that when y'all was at school? Like, I don't want to say that this was made up. I feel like there's been certain instances of this happening in schools, but have y'all ever had the experience switching cultures or switching families?
A chance to learn about another culture by switching households for 1 week.
Highlighting a key moment from the beginning of this episode is when Penny finds out she has to switch with Radhika Zamin and her Pakistani family.
Radhika Zamin? Who is that?
But isn't me, I found it odd that Nobody knew who she was. Penny didn't know who she was. Like, were they a new family that just moved there? How did nobody know them? But when Penny finds out who they are, she sees what they're wearing, she gets uncomfortable.
Be a pleasure to have you in our household, Penny.
Even so much so that the next morning, she fakes being sick so she doesn't have to go through with it. But Trudy catches on.
Hey, now stay away from me. Whatever you got, I don't want to catch.
Well, you don't feel warm. Penny Proud, are you trying to get out of the cultural exchange? No!
Penny eventually lets on that she feels a little sketchy about switching with the family, and Oscar even emphasizes this.
She's scared. And quite frankly, so am I. We don't know anything about those people.
You see how he said those people? Basically saying that like they're other. This goes to show what I was talking about earlier when it comes to the phobia part. Just having this fear or this uncertainty, being uncomfortable based on how they look, how they dress. You didn't know them. Obviously, she didn't know who she was. You just saw how they were dressed and you already have this uncomfortable feeling. Why? Now, I want to talk about the differences they highlight between Penny and Radica when they stay with each other's families. There's a mean family. Penny finds that the men are sexist. She tries to help them with a chess game, and he basically tells her to stay in her place.
Oh, so you know how to play chess, Penny. Then you know to never offer advice unless you're asked.
Okay.
The mother is like doing like the housewife duties.
Mrs. Amin, is Mr. Zamin in a bad mood?
And I like how they had a conversation about wearing a hijab. But is it me, or I feel like they had the mother pronounce it wrong?
It's not a tablecloth. It's a hijab. A what?
And when I looked it up, that was like a big conversation, like why they had the mother pronounce it like that. I guess certain words have certain pronunciations, and I always heard it pronounced hijab, but they had her pronounce it hujab. I don't know about that. What y'all think? Going into the conversation about women wearing a hijab, I really liked how they gave more explanation on it.
No, it's a headscarf. It promotes modesty and deflects the interest of boys.
Living in New York City, one of the most diverse cities in the world, right? I've seen many women wear it out and about, out in the street, out in public. I've had classmates that had to wear it, and I never really knew what it was for. I never really knew, like, I knew it was traditional. I knew that was a part of their culture, but I never knew why. And I know that there's different types, they have different names, and I know in certain countries, like Iran, it's more mandatory. You know, you do your research as you get older, as you get more curious about these things. But I really liked how for a Disney cartoon in 2003, they were trying to explain these different things, especially towards the demographic that was going to watch. You know, mainly black kids, Latino kids, and, you know, everyone in between. I really liked how they tried to do that. And this is what I say. I liked how the Proud Family was such a progressive show in that sense that they even thought to do an episode like that. Then they even had the mother explain to Penny what fasting was. But this was another controversy because a lot of people said they don't like how the Proud Family made it seem like with fasting, you don't eat at all. Well, basically, it's just you eat at a certain time. You eat after the sun goes down, before it comes up. Like, it's a special time period. It's not that you starve yourself. It's just you eat at a certain time period.
It's fast as in we must not eat at all.
Then when it came to a Radical experience with the Proud Family, she went into those like womanly duties of, you know, cooking and cleaning. And Trudy and Sugar Mama had to tell her, no, in this family, in our culture, the men can do that too.
Radica, sweetheart, what are you doing? I'm preparing dinner for Mr. Proud. In this household, the woman is in charge.
That's because in this house, the woman makes the money.
Oscar,
Yes, dear.
I'm hungry.
Take out a home cook.
Home cooked.
And you know, going back to this episode, another thing I want to bring up is the part where La Cienega said something about, oh, and wear one of those Afghani scarves. And Sticky had to correct her and say, no, they're from Pakistan.
Hide this beautiful face from the world under one of those Afghani scarves? I don't think so.
Pakistan, not Afghanistan.
The Proud Family was good at highlighting certain attitudes and certain responses where some people confuse all the different countries and religions like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, Iraq. Some people can't tell the difference, so they just assume it's this when it's really another culture, it's really another country. Same thing when it comes to like Chinese, Korean, Japanese. A lot of people confuse the cultures when they're different. Another thing I want to talk about in this episode, and I didn't realize it until I rewatched this, and it's really subtle. Some of you might not get the significance of it, but I feel like some of us will, is when they had Oscar repeatedly mispronounce Radika's name. He kept calling her Radika.
Hey, Radika, come here. I want your opinion.
My opinion?
Look, don't listen to her, Radika. I anticipated this cultural obstacle.
I feel like because they showed Oscar being the more reluctant parent from the beginning, from the get-go, it showed how he didn't care to pronounce her name right. You know, certain cultures, there's certain pronunciations to certain names, right? Radika, he's calling her Radika. Like, you know, the way that most black names would be pronounced. Some of y'all that know what I'm saying, y'all will get it. Similar to the singer Aaliyah, her name is pronounced Aaliyah. She used to go on different interviews saying her name, saying the Arabic meaning, saying how it was pronounced Aaliyah, but most fans, most people in the industry still call her Aaliyah when it's Aaliyah. Her name was pronounced Radika. He kept calling her Radika. Some of y'all might not get the significance of that, but they had Oscar mispronouncing her name for a reason. I do like how when they had Oscar ask Radika to try one of his snacks, he told her how he made it with turkey instead of pork because he know Muslims can't eat pork. So I like that little touch. See, the Proud Family was great with those touches.
I used turkey rinds instead of pork. Now tell me what you think.
You really want to know what I think?
Also, another thing when it came to Penny, when she finally decided to wear the hijab, her friends and the Gross sisters were kind of like making fun of it.
I didn't recognize you with that double wide do-rag on your head.
What about you, Erykah Badu? I know you holding.
I don't have anything. I haven't even eaten in the past 2 days.
Because it's so different from like the Americanized way of dressing, a lot of people won't take it seriously. A lot of people will joke about it. So over the episode, some time has passed, and Penny and Radika get a sense for how it was to live with the different culture. Penny becomes more accustomed. She decides to fast with them, and she really takes in this cultural exchange. And even the husband from the Zameen family, who was so sexist to Penny, who kind of was telling her to stay in her place, he even accepts her, and they work as a team.
You cheated. Penny helped you. That's not cheating. We're a team. Aren't we, Penny?
That's right.
So in this sense, it shows that not only the kids got something out of it, but the adults, the parents in the situation too. They all learn from each other, and they all learn, okay, we have our own cultures, but this is not the only way we can communicate with each other. Now we get to the biggest part, the most memorable part of the episode, when they all had the celebration, because you know the fasting, Ramadan had ended, and they have the celebration, the feast where they eat, the families connect. But on the way home to the Zameen house, they see this.
Look, everybody. Who would do such a thing?
What the?
Oh, no.
That was a hate crime, and essentially somebody trashed their house, spray painting, go back to your country. The only thing with it is that it seems so random, it seems so out of place, because for the whole episode, it never seemed like the Zameen family had any enemies or had people looking at them weird, looking at them funny. Penny in the beginning, Oscar, they had their little thing, but for somebody to just do that randomly, it was kind of like, really? But you know, they had to do this for the shock value and to represent that a lot of people think like this. When they see certain people, certain religions, people dress a certain way, people with certain skin tones, people with certain accents, a lot of people in America have that idea of go back to your country. And I have a story time, quick story time. This story time happened in the same check casher place where one of the employees stole my money. I had a story time about that. They hired some interesting people. But the story goes like this. I was waiting in line. It was the cashier. And the girl, me and the girl, you know how you see certain people that work a certain place and you become familiar with them. So every time you see each other, it's like, oh, hi, good morning, oh, blah, blah. She'd been working there for a few years. And, you know, she was a Dominican girl, right? And, you know, we talk all the time, blah, 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 and go about our business. But for some reason, the man before me, he was a older, dark-skinned guy. He had a heavy Caribbean accent. So I guess something had went wrong with his transaction. 2 minutes into the argument, she started yelling back at him, go back to your country. Go back to your country. I don't care. Go back to your country. And I was like,
oh my God.
This dark-skinned, older guy with a heavy Caribbean accent, one of the first insults you could think of is to say, go back to your country, go back to your country. I was like, wow. I looked at her differently. From then on, I kind of like side-eyed her. I'm like, first of all, you're Dominican, right? Because she told me somebody could tell you the same thing. In my head, I was like, what makes you feel you have the right to tell somebody to go back to their country like you belong here and they don't?
Could somebody please make it make sense?
America is supposed to be home of the free, where a lot of different cultures could come. It's supposed to be a mixing pot. The Dominican girl in the check cashier place telling the older dark-skinned Caribbean guy, go back to your country, go back to your country. You heard he had a Caribbean accent. The first thing you say is, go back to your country. And I'm like, what makes you feel like he's so other, he's so different, that he needs to go back to his country? He doesn't belong here, but you do.
Now, you done pissed me off.
That's what get me. So when it came to the episode where somebody trashed your house, telling them to go back to their country, why? Why do they need to go back to their country? Just because they make you feel uncomfortable? Why? Reminder, this is post 9/11. So a lot of people had conflicted feelings about Muslims or different religions, different cultures, different, people they would see dressed a certain way, whether it was women wearing a hijab or, men wearing turbans. Personally, for me, I never felt a way. Like when I saw somebody wearing a hijab or a turban or wearing certain clothes, I didn't feel like, oh, let me stay away from them or let me move to the other side. It was what it was. That's just what they were wearing. That's how they express themselves in their culture. A lot of people after 9/11 quickly developed an Islamophobic mindset. Penny gave her speech where she highlighted how she felt they were so weird and different when she realized they were all one and the same. They're just in a different culture. They may dress a certain way, they may have a different accent, but in a way,
Exactly like all of our families.
and I wanted to ask y'all, what did y'all think about that episode of The Proud Family where they discussed Islamophobia and the different aspects of it? How well do you think The Proud Family handled that topic? Have y'all ever experienced it? Have y'all ever witnessed it? Were there any parts of the episode y'all felt like they could have did better? Mind you, this was a Disney cartoon. This was an episode from 20 years ago. And how do you think they handled the different aspects of the episode where it came to talking about Ramadan, fasting, wearing a hijab, or even things like Oscar mispronouncing Radhika's name, the whole insult of telling somebody that's from a different race or religion or culture to go back to your country? What are your thoughts on all of that? Let me know down below. I feel like this could be one of the most interesting comment sections I've had. And we talked about some topics on this channel, some topics with the Proud Family, but I feel like this comment section can really get interesting. Please don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Thank you for watching and listening. I'll see y'all in the next video.